Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order at this time, and I'll ask Councilman Dunn if he will please lead us in the invocation. If you will please rise and remain standing afterwards for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Lord, thank you for allowing us to come together. Thank you for the citizens of the town that come together and put their input in and let us do what is best for the community. And please be with the people across the world as we deal with the terror attacks that are going on. Excuse me. And please let us have a productive evening. Let everyone have safe travels home.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Gentlemen, you see the agenda in front of you. Are there any additions to the agenda or changes? I do have one known change to the agenda, is add closed session, section 5, to discuss potential property acquisition.
Mayor, I'd like to move business item number 4 to the consent agenda, please, of the council.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move that to the consent agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any other changes?
I move we approve the agenda as amended.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. First item this evening is a presentation administering the oath of office to newly promoted Lieutenant Nathan Minilar. Thank you.
Congratulations.
The next presentation this evening is administering the oath of office to newly promoted Sergeant Jordan Jeffrey. I, Jordan Jeffrey, do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States, that I will continue to be faithful, and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina, and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof, that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, that I will be alert and vigilant to enforce the criminal laws of this state, that I will not be influenced in any manner on account of personal bias or prejudice, and that I will faithfully and impartially execute the duties of my office as police sergeant according to the best of my skill, abilities, and judgment. So help me God.
Congratulations. Just leave it down there. Not yet.
Okay, at this time, I would ask our planning director, Mr. Paul Embler, to come forward, please, for a presentation. How are you, sir? I'd like to read this proclamation in honor of your retirement and all of your service to the town of Smithfield. In honor of Paul C. Embler Jr.'s service to the town of Smithfield. Whereas Paul Embler has been a dedicated employee since May 12, 2003, and has announced that he will retire on July 1st, 2017. And whereas Paul Embler has served the town of Smithfield as the planning director for 14 years, and whereas during Paul Embler's tenure with the town of Smithfield, his professional involvement and accomplishments include the Buffalo Creek Greenway Project, the News Charter School Project, the Community Plan Project, the development and update of the Unified Development Ordinance, along with numerous other projects. And whereas Paul Embler's goal as the planning director was always to improve the quality of life for the citizens of Smithfield, and he has demonstrated in many ways his deep and genuine love for the community. And whereas Paul Embler has earned and deserves this public recognition for his years of service and dedication to the town of Smithfield. And whereas Paul Embler will be missed both professionally and as a friend, and we extend our very best wishes to him for a long and prosperous retirement. Now therefore, I, Andy Moore, Mayor of the town of Smithfield, along with the members of the town council, express our sincere appreciation to Paul Embler for his distinguished service to the town of Smithfield, and urge our citizens to join with us as we extend our sincere appreciation for his work and wish him well in his future endeavors. Thank you very much. Would you like to say anything, Mr. Embler?
Please.
All right. Before you start, I do want to just personally say thank you for all that you have done over the many years that you served the town, not only working with the town, but just your involvement in our community ever since I've known you, starting in Scouts many years ago. Your involvement there touched so many young men as they grew through the scouting process, and just your dedication and your love for this town has shown in the many things that you participated in, and you'll be missed, and we certainly do appreciate all that you've done for the town, and we just hope that you will enjoy your retirement and be able to maybe enjoy that new mountain home.
Gonna try to.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Mike is yours.
I really appreciate the opportunity to be with the town of Smithfield and be part of a thing that's happened over the last, let's see, we moved here in 77, 30-some years. It's been an experience for my family. We've really enjoyed it being here in Smithfield, and we're going to continue to be here in Smithfield. I look at this as if one door is closing in my life, in my family's life, but another door is opening. And I think there are great things that are going to happen in Smithfield, because there's going to be doors opening for Smithfield, and Smithfield's going to grow. And it's a good community. We've been here. We made the decision to raise our children here, and we've really enjoyed it, and the town's given us a lot. So appreciate the opportunity, and thank you.
Would you introduce your family that's here? Would you introduce your family that's here?
I'll be happy to. My sweet wife, Jane, who we've been married this Christmas 48 years. My oldest son, my middle son, Ross, and then his daughter, Addie, and then my oldest son. We have two of the Munchkins here. We have Selah and Simeon here, and they live in Clinton right now. And then my youngest son, Brett, is up in Apex right now. And we heard from him, he went to the urgent care. They're fine. So, but we have two other grandchildren that are not here. I wish they could have been here, but they're still in school in Clinton. So, thank you much.
Thank you.
You also have 3 Eagle Scouts, I believe,
Yes,
in your
sir.
sons. That's fantastic.
That's great. Okay, gentlemen, we'll move on to the first public hearing this evening, which is rezoning request RZ-17-01 ENF Properties Incorporated. Since this is not a quasi-judicial hearing, there's no need to swear anyone in for this particular public hearing. And Mr. Embler, I'll turn it over to you after I open the public hearing.
We open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now that all the high-tension stuff is over with, and my one last opportunity to present to the council is a rezoning request from ENF Properties LLC. Let me orient you on the map first as to the location. This is Booker Dairy Road. This is Buffalo Road. This is US 70 bypass. This is the piece of property we're talking about. This is the curve on Booker Dairy Road, and it's the 54 acres that is right here. The land is located on the north side of Booker Dairy Road, approximately 200 feet east of the intersection of Bradford Street. The property is further defined by Johnston County Tax ID number 140570004D.
The applicant is requesting to rezone approximately 54.95 acres of land to the R20, from the R20A Residential Agricultural District to the B3 zoning district. The property considered for rezoning does not appear to contain any environmentally sensitive areas other than included designated wetlands or regulated streams. North of the property, the zoning is R20A and the existing use is residential and agricultural. To the south, the zoning is B3 commercial, R10 and R20A, and the current land use is residential and vacant land. To the east, the zoning is B3, and the existing use is undeveloped and or vacant land. To the west, the zoning is R10, and the existing use is an R10 residential single-family subdivision. The property considered for rezoning is a large area of undeveloped land currently being used for agricultural purposes. The property is adjacent to the North Chase subdivision to the west and Northview subdivision to the south. The southernmost section of the property is adjacent to Booker Dairy Road and will have road frontage and access to the proposed Durwood-Stevenson Highway extension. Utilities include water, sewer, and electric will be available at or near the property. Property to the east of the subject property was approved for rezoning from residential to commercial by the town of Smithfield on March the 13th, 2015, including the 55-acre rezoning request. The total combined area zoned for commercial and high-density residential land uses in this area will equal approximately 300 acres. The town of Smithfield's future land use plan does not address changes in this area that have occurred since the plan adoption. The recent influx of rezoning requests appear to be in response to NCDOT's improvements to the Booker Dairy Road and the Durwood-Stevenson Highway extension, and not in response to any adopted small area plan for the location. The future land use has been identified this property as being suitable for low-density residential. However, anticipated commercial development due to the Durwood-Stevenson Highway extension is not identified on the plan, and is reasonable to assume that upon its construction, this land will be attractive for commercial and high-density residential. Might I ask, at the time that mentioned, that at the time the comprehensive plan was developed, the hearings were still going on for the Durwood-Stevenson roadway, and so it was not included into the plan. The rezoning will be consistent with the town of Smithfield's Unified Development Ordinance, provided that all proposed future land uses and site-specific development plans meet the minimum development standards of the town of Smithfield ordinances. The property considered for rezoning is immediately adjacent to two single-family dwelling subdivisions. Compatibility issues can be reduced through proper landscape buffers and careful planning and interconnecting access points. Fire protection will be by the town of Smithfield. Currently, there would be no impact on the rezoning for schools, parks and recreation. There currently would be no impact for the rezoning. Access and streets, access to the property will be from the Durwood-Stevenson Highway. Let me point out to you that the majority of the frontage will be on the new Durwood-Stevenson Highway. It is all unrestricted access, except for about the last 150 feet of the property. Water and sewer will be provided by the town of Smithfield, and electric provider will also be the town of Smithfield. In connection with the legislative decision for a rezoning request, the town council may consider certain approved criteria. Please refer to the attached approval criteria that is in your packet. The planning department recommends approval of the request to rezone approximately 54.95 acres of land from the R20A Residential Agricultural Zoning District to the B3 Zoning District. The Planning Board recommends approval of the request rezoning approximately 54.95 acres of land from R20A to B3 commercial. And the town council now is requested to review the petition and make a decision in accordance with the approval criteria for the rezoning, which is in your, established in your agenda packet. With that, that will conclude our presentation tonight from staff. There is also a representative of the owner with us tonight, Jerry Hodge of Adams and Hodge Engineering. And so we stand open for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Embler. Mr. Hodge, is there anything else that you would like to add?
No, I'll do a great job. We don't have any plans for it.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Are there any comments from anyone else in the audience at this time? Seeing none, any questions for Mr. Embler from the council?
Paul, what could go on a B3?
There's a table of uses in the Unified Development Ordinance. It's basically any type business that you see along US 301 as far as commercial businesses, but by conditional use, there can be things like multifamily housing, there could be patio housing, that anything that would be considered multifamily could also be by conditional use, which means the council's got to approve it before it can happen.
I would add to that also that government buildings can go in B3, government buildings.
As a matter of right, or?
As a matter of permitted right, yes.
Any other questions for Mr. Embler? Okay, we have a motion to close the public hearing.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
A motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Embler at this time? If not, there's some approval criteria on page 19, I believe, of your package. There's 8 criteria.
Mayor, my concern with this track is a buffer, because we do have a residential neighborhood beside it. That being said, I know the UDO addresses a buffer. And I think whatever comes out there, we need to be mindful of those residents. But I noticed the planning board discussed that quite a bit in their minutes. That being said, though, I think our buffer requirement is 40 feet, and it's got to have buffers. I move that we approve findings of fact 1 through 8.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve findings of fact 1 through 8. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Mayor, I move we approve the request.
Second. We have a motion and a second to approve the rezoning or the request RZ 17-01. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Embler. Our next item is the presentation of the 2017-2018 budget. Turn that over to the manager. Do I have a motion and a second to open the public hearing?
Make a motion, we open the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Manager, when you're ready, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's get our screen down here. Staff has worked since November 2016 to create a draft budget. This draft budget was provided to Town Council on April 13th, 2017, and a series of budget workshops were held in April and May. Following these meetings, additional changes were made, culminating in the proposed budget provided to the Mayor and Council on May 23rd, as required by North Carolina statute. This is a public hearing as required also by 159-12 of North Carolina statute in regards to that proposed budget. The highlights of this budget are, as provided by statute, all three funds, the general fund, our electric fund, and our water and sewer fund are all balanced. What you see on the left is what the budget numbers are, a little over 12.7 million in the general fund, 16.7 million in the electric fund, and 7 million in the water and sewer fund. The amounts on the right are the amounts that are under budget or less than last year's approved budget. So all three funds have decreased. We are seeing no tax increase this year as far as property taxes go. We are staying steady at 57 cents. No changes in electric fees, no changes in water and sewer rates. So everything's remaining status quo as currently they are today. Our general fund balance remains above 25% as fiscal policy requires, which actually we intend to be about 40 to 41% fund balance at the end of this fiscal year. And there's no reason, since the budget is balanced, it should fall below that. We use very little fund balance in this budget. We have capital expenditures of almost $600,000 in the general fund, just under $1 million in the electric fund, and the same amount in water and sewer fund. We also maintained our medical benefits for our employees at a similar level, though we did see an 8% increase in the overall rates. And we were forced to change providers for our insurance carriers. We are also including a tiered salary adjustment for all employees that equates to about a 2% overall cost of living impact to this budget. Some of the major capital expenditures that are in this budget are 5 police cars as well as an animal control truck. We have added fire station number 2 to the west side. Many of you might be aware we purchased the old Johnston Ambulance Building out on Highway 70 West. This budget includes enough money to operate that facility throughout the year. We're also completing the replacement of our finance software, our billing software, all of our records management system that goes with finance and accounting. That was started last year. Is ongoing and continuing today. I know our finance director met all week with our new provider to transfer data over and to get the new system operational. Our annual street resurfacing project continues. That's POW bill money at $260,000 next year. And we also are replacing a backhoe that we put $50,000 back for last year, which is in this current budget. We'll add $50,000 next year for a $100,000 cost to replace that backhoe. We're also replacing a street sweeper the same way at $250,000, though the last half of that will be financed this year instead of funded out of the general fund. We have $51,000 to replace the equipment and upgrade J.C. Kitty Park on 2nd Street. On the water plant, we'll be replacing 3 altitude valves in our water tanks at about $60,000 and doing some riverbank refurbishment for another $60,000 around where our water plant currently is located. Water and sewer will continue with our I&I reduction. You may recall 2 years ago we were spending a lot of money for water that comes into our sanitary sewer system and has to be treated. And those pipes, we've been working on those ever since, trying to repair any holes that are in them to reduce those costs. And we've made a considerable impact, but this is an ongoing process. It's going to continue for several years. So we have $100,000 to continue that process. Another thing that was started this year is the AMI metering. We have resources there for that as well, $210,000. And we have a Durham Street sewer line replacement project for $175,000 that somewhat discovered as we were going through I&I this year, and had problems, and that found that whole line of pipe in that area needs to be replaced. We also have some various lift station repairs also for our sewer system. In electric, we're going to again continue with our AMI metering at $500,000. Continue our voltage conversion, which started with the Brogdon Road new transformer 2 years ago, and it continues to move that throughout North Smithfield. Also, we are adding half the cost of a bucket truck, which will be purchased next year after we allocate the second half of the amount. Again, we have no change in tax rate, no change in water sewer fees, no change in electric rates. Booker Dairy Road Utility Project is fully funded. No capital asset transfer from the electric fund to the utility fund. Last year was the first year we did not do that, and we again do not transfer any of those assets into the general fund this year. And we continue to complete the Brogdon Road substation conversion project. Some future issues that we may have to deal with. We have Senate Bill 126 that's currently in committee in the House. That deals with changing the way sales tax is distributed. It basically takes sales tax away from communities that are doing better and somewhat allocates them to some of the poorer communities around the state, and that creates a loss for all the cities, including the county itself within Johnston County. Currently, that bill is in committee. I don't know if it's ever going to come out. I hope it stays there through this year so we don't have to deal with this. But if we do, we're going to see a net loss of somewhere between $87,000 and $104,000 to our general fund revenues. We have tried to make allowances for that in this budget so that if those losses occur, we don't have to go back and make any adjustments to it. But our hope is that that will remain status quo so that our revenues can stay consistent. Johnston County is also in the process of evaluating a sewer rate increase of about 6%. People need to understand that all of our sewer goes through their sewer plant, and they bill us for that sewer, and we pass that expense on to the consumer. So it's basically just a pass-through for us. So if those sewer rates do go up, the council will have to make a decision if they want to pass that rate on to the consumer. So it's possible those sewer bills could go up for our citizens as well. That right now would be on an average sewer bill about $4 a month increase. So it's not a lot of money, but it is an increase. Also, our wholesale electric rates were reduced by 4.5% April 1st of this year. We are still evaluating what to do with that decrease in our wholesale rate. What that means is the price that we are paying for electricity has gone down 4.5%, but it's only down for a brief period of time, just a few years. Then it's going to go back up again. It's going to go up more than the 4.5% by 2021. So we have to decide what to do with that. We are coining a study right now. We've hired an outside firm to assist us to look at that, to see if we should be lowering our rates now. But we want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence so that we're not pushing a situation on our residents where we're creating this roller coaster of electric rates going forward for the next few years. So right now that money has not been allocated. Any extra money that's coming in to the electric fund is placed in what's called a contingency line, which is like a savings line for emergencies, and not being spent until we can allocate and decide what to do with that decrease. Our property tax comparison, you can see throughout the years we have continually gone up. We took a little bit of a decrease in 2015, but we're estimating that our increase will continue. The highest is fiscal year 17, which ends the end of this month. With the growth that we are seeing, both residential and commercial, we anticipate our property tax will continue to go up. We will collect more property tax because we have more property that is being taxed, not because we're raising everybody's taxes. That stays the same. But because of our growth, that should grow, and that helps our community grow and allows us to provide better and more services. Sales tax, you can see how much sales tax we've earned. This is just a fraction of the sales tax that is obtained throughout Smithfield. The way sales tax works, a lot of people think that we have the outlet center here, we have a lot of hotels here, we have a lot of business here, so we should be collecting all of that sales tax. It's not the way it works here in North Carolina. Sales tax goes into a great big pool for every city in the county. And then it gets sent to the state sends it back to the county. And then the county disseminates it to each city based on their population. So the county takes the lion's share of this, and then just a small portion, that $2 million, comes back to us. But it's a sizable revenue source for us, but not nearly what we bring in. Our fund balance comparisons. You can see our water and sewer fund, which is the orange one here at the top, went way up, started coming way back down. That was when we were having all of our I&I issues with all of our leakage that I talked about earlier. For the first time, we're seeing this go back up. We're seeing a trend go there, so we believe we're having a positive impact on that issue. But we need that to continue that trend, and I'd really like to see it start to spike up a little bit more than that. Our electric fund has been strong. It continues to be strong. And with the decreases that we've seen the last few years, I think our electric department is in a very good position. Our general fund, which is all of our services, that's police, fire, public works, parks and recreation. That's the red line here. You can see we were somewhat, I'm sorry, that's the blue line, not the red line. Blue line right here where we had problems back in 2012, and we've shot up now to over 60%. Now understand that doesn't include some of the monies that we've taken out of the budget this year and to purchase the fire station on the west side and to do Venture Drive. So that number's probably going to fall back down about in here, somewhere between 45 and 41% by the end of the year. But that's still a very healthy fund balance for our general fund. Our general fund allocations, this is kind of where all of the general fund money is going. You can see down here, down here is your police department. That takes the lion's share of the general fund budget. Captain Powell's very happy to see that. He'd like to see that bigger, but that's as big as it's going to get this year. After that, Public Works takes a considerable amount. When you add all of these together, it's about 13%, which is about equal to the fire department. You then have recreation up here, which is about another 13% if you add recreation and the aquatic center together, and your other small departments equal the rest of that. So that's where the lion's share of your tax dollars are going, your property tax dollars are going in the general fund. In the water and sewer fund, it's pretty basic. Your blue there is 25% is your water plant. That's what we use to make the water and distribute it to your homes or your businesses. 63% is the water sewer district, which is primarily sewers. Debt service is 10%. That means the loans that we have out that we have to pay on the water plant and our sewer services. And 2% is contingency, which is that amount that we put back for emergencies to be used throughout the year. The electric fund is really basic. We only have the electric utility. That's all there is. It's what makes our electricity, keeps it going, keeps it repaired. Very happy with our electric department. I think most people are. When we compare to Duke Energy outside of this area, we usually have our power restored much quicker than they do. Ted Cradle and do an outstanding job of working in all kinds of weather storms to make sure that everybody gets their power restored as quickly as possible. Again, we have 2% of contingency here, which is, again, is kind of money put back for emergencies, and 4% of debt service, which is the loans that we have out that we need to pay back. This is our current debt chart. I'll just leave that up. This is all the debt that exists in the town right now as of today. We are assuming some additional debt in this budget, but that's not included in here, and some of this debt will fall off. We also see quite a bit of this debt falling off throughout the next fiscal year, so we'll be even in a better position at the end of this year, meaning June 30th of 2018. So I'm very happy with what you see here, and am confident that as we go forward, as debt falls off, we will be able to purchase more things that we need to keep the services healthy and provide those services to the community. And Mr. Mayor, I'm more than happy to answer any questions anyone might have. I know the council's been through numerous budget sessions, and I think we've answered most of the questions during that time, but if something else has come up, I'd be glad to try to address that, as well as our finance director, Greg Seiler.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Scott. Are there any questions from anyone in the audience regarding the 2017-2018 budget? Seeing none. Are there any other questions for Mr. Scott regarding the budget?
I just have a comment. I want to thank the manager for his leadership in putting together this budget and in your presentation tonight. Well done.
Thank you. I can tell you everybody out here except for me will be happy that this is over once it's done, but I enjoy this part of the budget. As I've said before, this is a fun time for me. So.
Okay, gentlemen, this time we can approve the budget. Entertain a motion to close. Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Have a motion to close the public hearing? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay. This time I'll entertain a motion to adopt the budget.
Make a motion, we adopt the budget. Second.
A motion and a second to adopt the 2017-2018 budget. And Mr. Harris, does that also include the budget ordinance as well as the fee schedule?
Correct.
Okay. All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. This time we will move on to citizens' comments. If there's anyone wishing to speak during citizens' comments, please come forward at this time. Good evening, Mr. Jennings. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for letting me be here tonight. For those of you who don't know, I'm Jeff Jennings. I'm your chair of the Board of Trustees for the Public Library of Johnson County in Smithfield. And since we're talking about budgets tonight, we thought this would be a good time to take 2 or 3 minutes and just thank you for your support and remind you of a few things that are going on at your library there across the street. You'll remember that our board is made up of volunteers, half of which this council has appointed, and we represent the public and make decisions regarding the direction, expenditures, and staffing of your library. We sincerely appreciate the continued support of the Smithfield Town Council. You budgeted $250,000 this current fiscal year, and this doesn't include the additional assistance you provided as part of your MOU with the county and town to repair that aging roof that we had on the building. Thanks for keeping the rain off everybody's heads and the books too. You have the same amount allocated in your proposed budget, so your funding is just under 25% of our total operating budget. Here are a few quick facts for you. This fiscal year, the library has circulated over 127,000 materials, while over 210,000 circulated countywide, and this includes our affiliates in Benson, Selma, Kenly, Four Oaks, and Princeton. There have been over 300 programs and meetings in the library, of which over 3,000 people, mostly children, attended this year. The library has just completed its first year as an NC Cardinal member. If you happen to be a library card holder, you can go online, search for a favorite book, and if that book ends up being in, say, Buncombe County, it can be shipped here at no charge for you to pick up at the library or one of the affiliates. You don't need a reminder on the importance of libraries to a town or a community. We know that access to the internet can help those less fortunate find jobs. We know that literacy programs for adults can improve their careers and social skills. And you know that libraries can be a safe haven for our children where learning to read is fun. And speaking of children, the library's summer reading program, Build a Better World, kicks off June 14th. And for the 8th year, the library is a partner with GSK and the Moorhead Planetarium's Science in the Summer program. And this year's theme is the science of sports. And just for hosting that little event, the library gets $400 in free books just for doing that. I can assure you that your Board of Trustees is working hard to make improvements and be good stewards of the public's money. We are utilizing our own dedicated funds to implement a grant program for innovative ideas from our staff, and we're using those funds to help purchase supplies. Next week, we have a new marketing committee that will begin to explore ways we can improve our outreach into the community. You may be aware that there are structural needs and repairs that have been identified for the building, and they will need to be addressed in the near future. We hope that you will be open to exploring with us how we can keep the facility secure, safe, and up to par with both the town's and the county's expectations. There's an old story of how a salesman worked long and hard to land his biggest client ever. And for 6 months, he courted this company, only to get a phone call one day when he found out they had chosen a competitor. And as he broke the news to his boss, he said, "Well, you can lead a horse to water." And his boss looked at him and said, "I didn't want you to lead him to water. I wanted you to make him thirsty." I think the same could be said for your library. We need to foster a culture of enjoyment and learning that makes our citizens thirsty for the resources and materials your library provides. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Thank you for your continued support. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And if I don't know the answer, Margaret, our library director, is here in the audience, so I'll refer it to her. But thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Any questions for Jeff? Thank you, Mr. Jennings, for all that you do and your board, and Margaret, and that you do for the citizens of Smithfield, not only Smithfield, but Johnston County and surrounding counties. Thank you very much. We have someone else that signed in. Okay. All right. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? Mr. Johnson?
Tim Johnson, sorry I didn't sign in. 1206 South Walnut Drive, Smithfield. Just happened to be here, good night to be here to see Paul out the door. I know he's excited about the next move in his life here. I just wanted to publicly thank him and let the folks here know that as a former fellow department head, I know some of the struggles we all go through as being department heads. You have a lot of people to please. It's not always an easy job. But Paul saved the town of Smithfield tens of thousands of dollars in the development of the community park, the Greenway, the Miracle League field when that got started. Just having his expertise, because actually we hired him to do it when he was working with Ragsdale first, and then McKinnon Creek. And so we had a in-house person that knew exactly what we needed, could advise us and do all the plans and things. So there were a lot of things that we didn't have to bid out because we had Paul on our staff, and just wanted to publicly thank him for what he did and all the other department heads, well, most of them anyway. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anyone else wishing to speak during citizens' comments at this time? Okay. Seeing none, gentlemen, we will move on to the consent agenda.
Make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Now draw your attention to the business items, beginning on page 79 in your agenda package. First business item this evening is consideration and approval to enter into an agreement with ETC Institute to conduct a community survey. I will turn that over to our intern, Mr. Stephen Walker. And Mr. Walker, if you will take just a minute before you start your presentation to kind of introduce yourself and tell everyone what you're doing.
Good evening. My name is Stephen Walker. About 4 years ago, I used to be a police officer here in the town of Smithfield. Just over 4 years ago is when I left. I'm currently working toward an MPA with UNC Pembroke, mostly online. But Mr. Scott gave me the opportunity to do an internship with the town this summer. One of the first days I came here, Mr. Scott came to me about his interest in completing a community survey. Many people might not know what that is, but there's outside agencies that poll the citizens and to ask them their thoughts on the town's services. We feel like this is a good way for the town to reach out to the community and let them express their thoughts of how the town's doing. It'll provide the town with an accurate snapshot of the thoughts of its citizens, and it will also promote community engagement. Mainly in Wake County, but several local municipalities conduct these surveys on a regular basis. Town of Cary is every 2 years, same with the city of Durham. Somehow the village of Pinehurst does one every year, which is quite exhaustive. So I went through and I contacted several companies that have conducted these surveys. The UNC School of Government keeps a list of surveys conducted by the towns. Whenever I contacted these companies, I received the following quotes. The National Research Center gave a quote of $14,265, but had an additional $5,760 worth of fees. Decision analysts wouldn't go into much detail without giving them a bid, but they gave a rough quote of $20,000 to $25,000. BKL Research quoted at $19,850, and ETC Institute $15,520, with $1,500 with going towards cross tabulations, and $1,750 for an in-house presentation given by their staff once they finalize the survey. Discussing with Mr. Scott, we believe ETC Institute is the most cost-efficient estimate. There are several reasons why we feel this way. ETC Institute, in their estimate, includes benchmarking and analysis, GIS maps, and other formal reports that are easily to read and understand. ETC Institute has a tremendous amount of experience conducting these surveys throughout North Carolina. They've recently conducted surveys for Wilmington, Raleigh, Durham, Harnett, and Davie counties. They've also been the company that smaller municipalities have used, such as Waxhaw, Pinehurst, Lincoln, and Morrisville. We feel like the benchmarking data that is included in the ETC Institute estimate will provide a baseline for the town and will then give the town goals to achieve. The benchmarking compares the town, shows the town where it's currently at, and compares it to the region and other towns throughout the country. And sorry, I forgot to mention how this would be funded.
You would have been asked, don't worry.
I'm sure. We discussed funding this project with $6,256.67 dispersed from each of the three funds of the current fiscal year's budget.
That money will be allocated from contingency dollars from each fund that we currently have a surplus in for every fund. In your budget amendments that are in your packet that Finance Director will be discussing with you later, we've included those amendments. If the council chooses not to do this, we will need to eliminate those from his presentation. When I first became the manager here, one of the things we discussed, especially while I was interviewing, was doing this type of a survey and the importance of doing one so that we could get a baseline as to where we were and how we stood up to other communities. We're, from time to time, see news that comes out that uses things like crime statistics that just are not accurate because it's only using a population base, which is fine as long as we're only going to count crimes against our own residents. But if we're going to count crimes against people who enter our community, then we also need to include those people, and that data continually gets missed. This is a mechanism for us to see really where our citizens feel that we are, and then allow this company to measure us against other communities as well, and give us a better feel for where we are and some ammunition, if you will, to either put money in certain places that we're not putting it, or take money away from places that we are putting it, and retrofit it to meet the goals that our department heads create, the council approves, and that hopefully this institute will bring up in the future. So this was an opportunity for us to get this done now with money that we had, as opposed to trying to budget in the future and moving forward. So it seemed like a logical thing to do, to bring it before you tonight, to see your feelings and if it's something you felt was important enough to move forward on.
Questions from the council?
Will the survey be by mail, or will it be individually done through home to home, or how will that be done?
They're going to take a sample size of about 400 residents, and it's primarily going to be done through mail. They're going to attempt to make contact with the individuals several times. It's not just a one-time thing. And from what I understand, if they are having difficulty reaching the people by mail, they're going to also call as well.
They'll actually send out the surveys in the mail with an envelope that's stamped for them to send it back. That's the best way to do it, because if you do an internet, anybody can come in from anywhere outside of our community. We aren't really getting a good sample size. They may not be honest there, but if they're mailings, which is what we did with a police survey back in 2010, then we know exactly where they're coming from, and that GIS mapping that you see there, that comes into play because we know where these people, what district they live in, so that we get an idea of how their feelings fit with everybody else.
Those 400 people that are selected, will they be across different demographic lines? Will it be done so many per district based on population, or how will they come up with those 400 names?
From what I understand, we're going to contact the Public Works Department and get addresses from the billing addresses of residents. I'm not exactly sure. We can discuss if they would evenly disperse it across the voting districts. They did not cover that.
We did discuss that, though, about the voting districts, that it would be, you're not going to have a sample size that's all going to be in the north side. It's going to be spread throughout the town. But as far as racial makeup or demographics, there's no way to know when you send someone a survey how, you can tell maybe by their name if they're male or female, but other than that, there's no way to know what you're sending to. But that information will be collected. So once the survey comes back to us, we'll know those demographics, both age, sex, race, Hispanic, non-Hispanic, and district that they live in.
So if you just do it 100 per district, that would be the simplest thing.
It's basically the same.
That's what I would suggest right there.
Is that what we're gonna do? Is it 100 per district or not? I mean, that's.
It has to be a random sample, so you can't just say it's 100 per district, because then it's not random anymore. But it'll be spread out as evenly as possible between the districts by a mechanism that is making sure it's random sampling. Your population isn't even in every district. We're trying to get an even population. So when you do a survey like this, you don't do the same number exactly in every district, because that's not how your population is distributed.
I move we approve the request.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the community survey. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
Thank you, sir.
Good presentation. This time we will move on to business item number 2, consideration and approval to allow staff to work with CSX Railroad and a local developer landowner to evaluate the feasibility of creating a quiet zone across the Peden Road Railroad crossing. Gentlemen, this is on page 81 of your agenda. At this time, I will turn it over to the manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This request is made by a local developer that owns the property at the Egna Magnolia Drive there, just off of Venture Drive. It's actually Mr. McLam, and he is here tonight to answer questions or also assist us with this presentation if need be. A quiet zone is an area of town along the railroad track where a train does not have to blow its whistle where it normally would. The Peden Road crossing, based on the development that they're looking to do in that area, would be conducive to a quiet zone. We have to fill out an application for CSX Railroad, and only a government entity can submit that application. So the developer himself can't do that. He has to come to the town, and the town has to submit that application. The railroad will not get involved in conversations with the town until that application is filed. So the conversations I've had with Mr. McLam was for the town to file that application at some point in order to pursue those types of conversations to see if a quiet zone would be opportunistic in that area. Some of the things that are required for a quiet zone is you have to have a crossing that comes down so that cars can't drive around it. So a lot of your crossings, when they come down, one comes down on one side, one comes down in the other lane, and people can drive around it. A crossing for a quiet zone has to have 4 arms, so 2 of them come down on each side, stopping traffic all the way around so they can't drive through. It just so happens the Peden Road crossing already has that type of crossing arm. Nowhere else in town do we have that. The quiet zone by CSX standards, actually railroad standards around the country, has to be a minimum of a half a mile long. So we have to decide how far we want that quiet zone to reach. But we do have that much distance between the different railroad crossings if we put Peden Road right in the middle. One thing we found out after we submitted this information to you is there is a $6,000 deposit that has to be made to CSX Railroad before they will discuss anything with us. They use that money to make their evaluations, and any money's not used by them or returned. Mr. McLam has agreed to pay that $6,000 if we get to that point of wanting to pursue a possible quiet zone. That is somewhat contingent on his development. So tonight what we're asking for is the approval to file an application with CSX with Mr. McLam paying the $6,000 at a time that would be consistent with his development if indeed it comes to fruition through the planning board process and the county council process. So this will be done at a later date if that comes about. It doesn't put us in a position where something changes, we ever have to approve the quiet zone, but I'm sure that Mr. McLam wants to pay the money, and there may be some other upfits that have to be done to that intersection as well that he would hopefully pay for. So he's not going to want to get in that unless the council feels like it's something they truly want to entertain. Mike, do you have anything you want to add? Come on.
I would say to Mr. Scott, thank you for talking through all of that with me, and I would think, you worded that just right. I mean, based on our conversations. I mean, I don't think I can add to or take away what you said, but I think that you summarized our conversations just right based on what we said. And at which point, any of our current property holdings that we have out there or future development plans come forth where we see fit that would be beneficial for us, I think that will be, we're willing to pay the $6,000 for the application fee. At what point that we got involved in this, we didn't realize there was a $6,000 application fee. What I'll say is, based on the research that I've done and the conversations that I had with the gentleman in Florida, I think it will be a tremendous asset for the area in general out there for the motels and the retail business and the residents in that area. I mean, let's face it, the train whistle doesn't blow when it crosses the grade level crossing. So, you know, with that being said, the gentleman that I talked to in Florida that is well versed in this felt like the Peden Road crossing was kind of low hanging fruit. And what I don't want it to be is burdensome on the town or on us for that crossing to become a quiet zone. If it's something that's kind of easy for us to do without a lot of monetary expenditures for the town or for us, then great. If not, then we'll pursue something else. Okay, thank you.
Michael, when you talked to the guy in Florida, did he address anything regarding increased risk, safety risk when you go to a quiet zone?
That's why there's a whole list of things that are required at that crossing. Some of it might be the quad gates, some of it might be the lane barriers. And all of those things are set up by the federal DOT, and they're set up by the like CSX. And I don't know exactly what those things are, Councilman Ashley. I don't know, but they're very specific. I mean, you can't get around that. I mean, they're there. It's not subjective. They're calculated out. Okay, they're risk factors that are calculated. You can't just say, oh, well, that looks good, let's do this.
I would gather that the National Transportation Safety Board would also weigh in on that as well.
There are 2 or 3 entities involved.
Yeah, this is not the first quiet zone in the country.
Yeah, this gentleman, that's Paul Calvarisi. I mean, they set up 26 of them at one time, and there were multiple entities involved. Okay.
Well, that was my point about increased risk of accidents. It's not the first one. So that information ought to be readily available.
Yeah, I mean,
Be the first one in Smithfield.
It's not a quick process. There are only 2 of them that I'm aware of in this state. I think there's one in Rocky Mount and there's one in Apex. Okay. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you got that I can answer.
I was on the council when the road project was done where the roundabout is, and there was actually originally 3 phases. There was phase 1, which was out where the roundabout is. Phase 2 was where the turn is there to go down the side of the theater, back over to go to Corral. And phase 3 was a plan to connect that area with Venture Drive. And I don't know if some of the members on the council are really familiar with what all transpired during that time. To make a long story short, the phase 3, the attachment to Venture Drive was never done for several reasons. But this particular piece of property, correct me if I'm wrong, this particular piece of property, if we have plans to attach Venture Drive and do a whatever type phase 3, it could affect this property. Am I correct?
I really wouldn't like to discuss the
Well,
details of our development plan, but
Well, and I've not seen it, and I don't know what it is. I just, my point is, getting a quiet zone, I think the council needs to be aware that, we need to, in my opinion, we need to try to cooperate with the landowner to, work with them to have that property developed, but we need to work in a manner with them that is, suitable to them, if we plan to go down that road at some point, is my point. Anyway.
I have no problem going forward with this, at no cost to the town. We're not agreeing to anything. Staff time to prepare an application.
Well, I would not want them to pay $6,000 and then them come to us with a plan that we turn down. I mean, that was my point.
We can't vote on a plan that we don't know, I guess. We don't know.
Yeah, but you spend $6,000 to get a quiet zone that you can't.
Well,
That was my point.
I would want the motion to be that we can apply for the quiet zone at a time of our choosing, so that we would not even apply for the zone, you can correct me if I'm wrong, until after the property is properly vetted to see if their development's going to work and go in there. But once we get to that point, we want to have our ducks in a row so we can.
I don't have a problem with that. I just want to make sure that, they said they'd be willing to pay. I don't want them to pay anything until we're on down the road a little bit, out of respect to them.
Absolutely.
But thank you for that, Councilman Harrison. And I think that was the gist of it, that being what it is, that we don't want to pay the money until we figure out if we can move forward with any project that we may have in that area.
So just one other question. So once we make application, then they can come back and make suggestions for improvements to the crossing, or do we think the crossing is in?
We believe that the crossing will have to be upgraded to some level. We think probably 90% of what is needed is there.
Okay.
But we do believe there'll be some required upgrades from the people that we have talked to. But they, like Mr. McLam said, it's somewhat low-hanging fruit when you compare this crossing to some of our other crossings or other crossings around the country. We're very fortunate that it has the crossing arms that it has. And we have sidewalk on one side, and that arm comes down across the sidewalk, so it also stops pedestrian traffic. But there will probably be some minor adjustments that have to be made, but that's what the railroad will do, is they will come out, assess everything, tell us, not make recommendations, but they'll tell us what we have to do if we want it to be a quiet zone.
Okay. And so at that time, it'll come back. If there are recommendations, then it'll come back before the board if there's anything that has to be spent there. Right?
Just like any other traffic control would come to the board.
Okay. Any other questions?
So as I read it, we're approving, we need to make a motion to approve staff allowing to do the investigation.
To file the application.
And I make that motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
It's to file an application if and when Mike decides he wants to proceed forward.
Right.
It's not going to necessarily be filed.
Right.
That's for the future. Say if it's 6 months or whatever, I mean, I don't know what your time frame would be, but you won't do it today or in this budget. I mean, possible.
Well, maybe in this budget, but I
It
think
may not be, I don't know, it depends on what you're.
what I understand is Mr. McLam doesn't want to move forward with this until he gets a little further along with his development plans.
The
in
motion
area.
is to do an investigation, the motion is not to spend $6,000.
Correct.
Yes.
I would have to pay the money to the town, so the town could
So
do it.
you may want to make that a part of your motion, though, is that Mr. McLam has agreed to pay the $6,000 filing fee. That's a correct statement, correct?
That's correct.
At the time of his choosing, once it gets,
Be paid with the application.
Yes.
That's right.
you know, change your motion.
But no, I don't think that's right.
Sure it is. What do you mean? I'm sorry.
Well, the land has to go through the process. It's going to be developed. through the city to make sure that it's suitable for development. So I don't think we should allow any money to be spent right now until we get on further down the road.
But that's what, but that's
The motion
what.
is just.
He's asking
just for the
permission to
application.
file the
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
application
just for the
at a later
application.
date.
Yeah.
But no money.
No. When you file the application,
You have to send money.
$6,000 has to go along with that application.
He's not necessarily filing right now.
He's not filing the application right now, but he has agreed to pay the $6,000 at the time that application is made. But at the time that application is made, they won't even talk to us until they receive a check for $6,000.
My point is, I think we should allow staff to investigate it.
They can't.
before we-
That's what I'm telling you. We've already had discussions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Manager, the railroad will not even talk to us until they have a check in hand for $6,000. Okay? Now, that is
And
up
an
to,
application.
that is up to Mr. McClam and the staff to determine when they would like to do that. All we're saying is, yes, we're agreeing to move forward as long as Mr. McClam agrees to pay the $6,000 fee. You can do it at whatever time you would like to do it. Is that a fair statement, Mr. McClam?
It is, but I will pay the money to the town.
Yeah. You'll pay it to the town, and the town, because the town has to make application.
I'm wondering if such a motion doesn't need a sunset on it. So it doesn't lay open for 2-3 years.
That's fine.
Mr. Siler? Of course, it doesn't cost us anything, it wouldn't matter.
No, there's no budget.
So, once the applicant feels comfortable with going forward, then the applicant would agree to pay the fee to go forward.
That's correct. That is correct. And I just wanted you to make that a part of your motion because as being mayor and looking back on meeting minutes, some things get lost, and I don't want us to be 6 months down the line and all of a sudden we're paying $6,000 for this application, you know. And
So my motion is, once the applicant is comfortable with going forward with the town applying for the quiet zone, then at that time, we would be willing to go forward with him paying the fee.
and I think I had a second.
I second.
All right. Are you guys okay with that amendment to the motion? Okay. I have 2 seconds.
2 seconds. Second and a half.
Okay. All right, gentlemen, I have a motion and a second to approve, to allow staff and the developer, or actually staff to move forward at such time that the staff and the developer agree with the application, with the developer paying a $6,000 fee to the town, and then the town making application. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. McClam. Gentlemen, we'll move on to business item number 3, which is found on page 83 of your agenda. Discussion concerning the NCDOT's offer to purchase Ava Gardner Boulevard right-of-way. Now we'll turn that over to Mr. Embley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is good news. Last meeting for me with the council, and I get to come before you with an offer. NCDOT has extended to the town of Smithfield an offer to purchase the Ava Gardner right-of-way as well as the roadway improvements that exist there now. They submitted the offer to us. They're willing to pay a total of $620,450 for it, which is for the land and the improvements. We have forwarded that to our town attorney for his review, and as well, he has engaged the services of a real estate appraiser to review to see if that was a fair and accurate offer, and the determination of both the attorney and the appraiser that is a fair and valid offer. And it would be staff's recommendation that the town accept the offered amount. We'll remind you that a few months ago in front of the SHRAC, they purchased a construction easement for somewhere around $30,000. So the net received from DOT to the town in the roadway project is approximately $650,000. So I stand open for any questions, but it is staff's recommendation that the council consider accepting the offer and authorize the manager to pursue the needed paperwork with DOT to do so.
I move we approve the request.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to approve the request. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Can I have a vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Emley. Okay, we removed business item number 4. We moved that to consent agenda, so we'll move to business item number 5. Just found on page 163 of your agenda, consideration and approval for the revised garbage truck funding source and budget amendment. Mr. Seiler.
Council, Mayor, before you is a budget amendment request to change the source of funding for the acquisition of a garbage truck. The purpose of the change request is to free up monies that will eventually aid in the equipping and refurbishing of the new fire station. So this was just a thought that I had to free up monies to prevent any borrowing for the refurbishing of the fire station. Hopefully it will accomplish that.
So this in effect would reduce our fund balance.
No. It will increase our loan balance by $60-some thousand. But we were going to use fund balance, if you will, to aid in the purchase of the garbage truck. We're going to, in essence, put cash down and finance part, whereas now we're proposing to finance the entire purchase of the garbage truck and use that cash that would have been used as down payment to aid in the equipping and refurbishing of the fire department.
What is the length of that loan? The length of the loan? The 3-year loan, 5-year loan?
It will be a 5-year loan.
5-year.
Any questions? Any other questions?
Any other questions for Mr. Seiler?
I make a motion, we approve the request.
Second. We have a motion and a second from Councilman Wood. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, I have a handout.
Okay. While you're doing that, we'll move to business item number 6, consideration and approval of fiscal year 2016-2017 year-end budget amendments.
This handout is a revision of what's in your packet for Exhibit A and B. And as I was listening to Stephen give his presentation about the survey, it dawned on me that while I did do budget amendments to absorb the cost of the survey, Mike, correct me if I'm wrong, it's unlikely that that money would be spent this year?
No, we should spend it this year.
You think you'll, okay. Okay.
Well, at least we'll have a PO out this year.
And so it may be safe to not only do we do the budget amendment to fund the cost, but to possibly carry those funds over to the next year.
Yeah, the PO likely won't be closed by the end of this year.
Okay, so that will be one additional change that I will bring before you with Exhibit A and B. Let me back up because there's just a couple things I want to cover here. Year-end budget amendments to balance departments is the norm in government accounting. In an attempt to be more transparent this year, I gave more detail than I normally would. Usually I just lump a bunch of budget amendments together and I give a basic description that says to balance departments. But this year, I broke them up and gave various descriptions just in an attempt to be more transparent. The budget amendment, the request to encumber purchase orders, and the request to encumber monies without a purchase orders all have to be approved or voted on separately. So there are 3 separate items within this one action form.
So the Exhibit A and Exhibit B that you presented to us, the red items are the additions?
Right. I had given you Exhibit A and B in your package. Since that time, a few additional items have come to light, and I highlighted those items in red. So those are the add-ons from your original presentation. Let me also say that many towns don't attempt to review these budget amendments until the end of June. But because our board has one council meeting a month, excuse me. You all really don't work that much if it's a year.
That was very funny.
So my goal in presenting this now is to hopefully avoid any type of special meeting toward year end as we get closer to the year end. So if I'm successful, you won't see me again. If, as each passing week, we pay out bills, if I determine that some departments are getting a little too close for my comfort, I may come back to you with a budget amendment to prevent that department from going over their budget. Now, having said that, let me say that at May 31st or about, we stopped all departmental spending to make it easier to project where we'll be at year end. It's difficult to do that if they're spending up until June 30th. But a number of them will have purchase orders on record with us, and we can anticipate those items coming in. They don't always do, which is why we encumber. So if I've done my job successfully, you won't see me again. Emergencies happen. We can't control that. It's the one item where even though spending has ceased, that if an emergency comes up, we have no choice, but in most cases, but to fix or repair those items. So those are just unplanned events. So I have numerous budget amendments before you. I don't know if you've had time to look over them. Hopefully you have. Several of them are the result of Hurricane Matthews, another unplanned expense. Now, while we're expect to get reimbursement from the federal government, and we have indeed gotten a handful of dollars, the bulk of that cost is still being carried in this year's budget. And so we increased the budget to include those items. As Mike mentioned, the survey cost is in there, items 18, 19, and 20. I stuck them on the very end because it was one of the last things to come up. Miracle Park is there to continue to create a budget for that particular project. The cost of the fire station purchase, which we've already spent the money, but we didn't do a budget for it, so that had to be included in these amendments. So if you have questions about any others, I'll be happy to review them.
What's our total in our condemnation fund now? Put 25,000, how much is our total?
There's 25,000 in next year's budget, and there's 25,000 so far unspent in this budget, and we're moving that 25,000 in this budget, we're carrying that over to next year to make 50,000.
Okay.
Under recreation, what's $10,000 for swimming pool?
On the encumbrance list,
Yeah, maybe.
Mike, do you want to, I did that one today at your request. Do you want to speak on that? The 27,000.
10,000.
I'm sorry.
Oh, the $10,000 is in the current budget for the demolition of the Evanis pool. Or we haven't done that yet this year, so we're carrying that over into next year.
Gary, I thought we had a plan in place with Mr. Randall Durham, who was, I know he's a commercial contractor or whatever. I met with him myself out there, and he was gonna donate all this. He has a key. I mean, he said you gave him a key to go out there. Okay. But anyway, that's kind of need to be brought up. I didn't want to bring it up during the budget, but definitely in the public meeting. But there was somebody, I guess he's industrial contractor, whatever. I know he does some work for Levison, whoever he is. He's a local landlord or whatever. And I actually met with him out there one day. Tony Nixon met with him, and there was going to be a whole lot of cost that the town wasn't going to have to encumber as far as getting the pool. But I know I texted him a little bit, and now he won't return some of my texts. So I just want to put this out in the public meeting. You know anything about it, Mr. Scott?
No, I'm not really sure at all what you're referring to.
Okay.
Any other questions for Greg?
Well, what, is there a grand total of all this? Do you have a master number of?
Yeah, the grand total number wouldn't really apply here unless what you're asking me is, like we have a beginning budget at the start of the year.
Let me close my eyes and let you tell me.
If your question is how has that changed the original budget at the beginning of the year, I can provide you with that number.
That's my question.
I don't have that.
I know there's revenues, there's expenditures,
Right.
and the net of all sums is, can't magically be exactly the same. Some
Right.
money's gotta come from somewhere, but.
Well, let me say this. To fund the majority of the overages or new items that came from our contingency. Contingency is part of the original budget. There are items in here, such as the fire station, that we didn't give much thought to at the beginning of the budget. The opportunity became available. Board voted to purchase that building. Yes, that directly affects your bottom line. But within these budget amendments, there's only two type that come to mind. One has to do with Hurricane Matthews that we did not plan for. The other has to do with the fire station that we originally did not plan for.
And just to be clear, these encumbrances on Exhibit A and B are things that we are carrying over from this budget
year
that
into next year.
will plan to be done and paid for in the next budget. So it's not
Correct.
really a budget increase.
Correct.
Any more questions, Finance Director?
What else? We gotta approve, like,
So Greg, what do you need, Greg?
Can we-
You
Okay,
need
so there,
Make a motion.
one motion, or?
there are three different motions. There are three attachments. One has to do with year-end budget amendments. The second has to do with year-end project and purchase encumbrances. And the third has to deal with year-end purchase order encumbrances. So if you would make a motion, please, to accept, hopefully, each of those three separately.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve attachment 1, year-end budget amendments for 2016, 2017.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion
Mr.
carries.
Mayor, I make a motion for attachment 2 to approve year-end project and purchase encumbrance for 2016-2017.
Second.
Have a motion and a second.
Mr. Mayor, I make a,
One second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
And before you
Carries.
offer the last item, which is to encumber purchase orders, let me remind you that I will be adding yet to that list the purchase order numbers that we assigned for the community survey. So I will make yet one more change to that list.
So, but we can approve that with
You
this
can prove it
motion.
with
that
the
was not in,
change.
that was not in the budget we
So
approved.
what we're approving is exhibits A and B plus then the main thing. Is that?
You're approving,
Is Barry's motion to approve exhibit A and B?
correct,
There are 3 attachments at the bottom, 167.
Well, I hadn't
but
seen
it
We haven't done a
is,
third one.
it is exhibit B that I will add
That's the basic.
the survey cost to for each fund.
We approved
So
the first one.
exhibit B
That's
is
basically
part
what
of,
it is.
part of attachment 3.
Yes.
I make a motion, Mr. Mayor, to approve attachment 3, year-end purchase order encumbrance for 26-17, including what Greg needs to add for the survey.
I have a motion and a second by Councilman Wood. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion.
I oppose that one.
Motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Seiler. That concludes our business items. We'll move on to council members' comments. Any comments from the council at this time?
I'd like to make some comments. The budget we just approved, just like any other budget, it is a platform to go forward. And as we work through the coming months, there certainly will be changes that will come up that council will need to discuss. I know that we've got a lot of working parts right now between road projects, building projects, stormwater issues that need to be addressed at some point, be it to have a discussion about the Evanis pool, to have a discussion about the community, the Family Life Center, exactly what we're going to be doing there, be it the conversations with the expansions of the road system around the schools. There's a lot of working parts in this. There's a lot of things that will come up so that the citizens know that we just don't sit back and just go along with this throughout the year. There's always changes that come up that we work diligently to try to do what's right for the citizens of this town. With that said, there are numerous things that are working, I call them a work in progress, and everything may not be tomorrow what it is today, but with that said, I want to thank staff and I want to thank the council for the business meetings that we had, or the finance meetings we had, or what is referred to as budget meetings, which all are open to the community to come and attend. And it's a lot of people don't realize that this is not just a Tuesday night job for these town councilmen, that there's many hours put in by the council. There's many hours put in by our staff, and I want to thank our staff also, and our town manager for the professional job they do with putting this budget together and explaining it to us part-time citizen town councilmen. I look forward to working with this budget. I look forward to working as we work through the next year after this. We start on this budget, and there's a lot of questions and a lot of things going on. It's got a lot of working parts, but I believe this council can, with the help of staff, can come to some positive things that will go on in this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. I want to echo that because I was going to say something very similar. And you said most everything I want to say, but I did want to thank the department heads, the staff, and the city manager. I've been through many budgets, and I realize when we have better years, it's easier to do a budget. I get that. But I will say that this was one of the best processes that I've been through since I've been on the council, and that's a credit to the town staff and to the manager. So I do want to thank you for the process that I've gone through this time, and also to you gentlemen up here. We put in a lot of long hours, but I think we have a very good budget. So
Well,
thank you.
and I forgot to say the mayor. I said the council, but the mayor is obviously an integral part of what goes on, be it on a daily basis or a monthly or yearly basis, and I failed to thank the mayor also.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I
Councilman
got
Lee?
some comments. Basically, I'm gonna start out just wishing my dad a happy birthday on tomorrow. He's gonna be 74 tomorrow, so definitely going to shout out to my dad. I want to give some condolences to two ladies who was part of the Bellmount East Smithfield community, Miss Marticia Ennis, who was buried last week, and also Miss Diane Hagens, who was also a longtime educator, taught at Cornholders Elementary for a number of years. Just kind of going back to this weekend, I was in Clayton at a festival, Mondo Roots Festival. It was the second festival that was done in the town of Clayton. Just a multicultural, multiracial event. A lot of activities, a lot of arts, a lot of music, and it was just, kind of sad to hear coming from a councilman 10 to 15 minutes away when I had the chance to meet the owner or the guy who puts on this festival, that, that you would have to never worry about doing that in Smithfield because of the good old boy system. And I kind of took that to heart, but then again, after having some more conversation, a lot of times what's been said, and we looking at the budget, we could spend $18,000 on a survey, not knowing if some of my constituents are going to be a part of it or not. So, having spoke to a lot of residents of East Smithfield, some former employees from Smithfield over the last few days, the last few years, it's almost time for a State of East Smithfield address, and that's what I'm about ready to give now. We talk team. Team is an acronym. Together, everyone achieves more. And just looking at the budget, looking at some of these people that are here tonight, who come to every meeting, budget after budget, and it's the difference between coming correct and being politically correct. At some point, we got to come correct. Some of these people in East Smithfield, Blunt Street, they was promised curb and gutters. They never saw that. It's money. The natural gas lines. We look at the housing over in East Smithfield. That's one of the things that we've been talking about. Look at the housing. And I've been having some email correspondence with the manager, for the last month or so. And until we can get our manager and we can get the department heads to understand that East Smithfield is a part of Smithfield, we're gonna keep having the same situations. Streets. We spend so much money on Ventura Drive, but look at some of the streets in East Smithfield. We got to go through some kind of survey, some kind of study, when all we really got to do is just come over there and just look. Parks and Rec. One of the goals of Parks and Rec this year was to increase minority by 10%. My thing is, why just 10%? Why couldn't it be 75, 80%? You know, what is it now as far as minorities in Parks and Rec? One of the biggest things that, you know, I kind of talked about over the last month was just putting a mound back out there at Smith Collins Park, because there was going to be some baseball played out there. It was a tournament. You know, there was a big issue in putting a mound out there. But as I drove by yesterday, it's a dirt mound out there. Drainage, all this flooding. And one of the things that we found out doing the budget that I think was back in about 1986, there was supposed to have been a pipe that was supposed to have been widened. You know, that never happened. And I credit Mr. Charles Williams, who sat in his seat for so long. I understand what he went through, but for me, I'm gonna speak up, I'm gonna talk, and until we get department heads that will show up to East Smithfield without reacting to what I'm saying, okay, and caring about East Smithfield, and I have plenty of pictures that I'm gonna post and let people see. Now, one day I visited East Smith Collins Park with the manager, and we saw the ditch on the side of East Smithfield, on the side of Smith Collins Park. And the first thing he said was, you know, this should have been common sense. Well, common sense to me is it's still looking like that. So it's one thing to talk about it, but then, you know, what are we gonna be able to do about it? Over in one of the flooded areas during Hurricane Matthew, at Collier Street and Martin Luther King, right on the intersection, the gutters, they were full of debris. If we just get our workers to come over there and just do maintenance, routine maintenance, I don't know. Maybe the church there, maybe the houses, maybe they wouldn't have flooded. But, you know, up till I took pictures and sent it to the town manager, it would probably still be out there to this day. You know, it just goes on and on with the code enforcement. You know, we're gonna enforce action on some people, but the AmeriGas and that light over there, you know, but from what I've been getting is, you know, well, that's so-and-so's property. So therefore, our town attorney, he's not gonna mess with it. It's just talk. It's just talk around here. These people in East Smithfield on fixed income, you know, they stress over how they gonna get some of their light bills paid. They on fixed income. They not in two-family houses, okay, where they're getting an extra income. But then again, around here, we can laugh and joke about a former councilman who didn't pay an electricity bill for 5 years. You know, it's just not right. It's about coming correct. Much has been taken away. Yeah, we talk about the Eva Ennis pool, all right, which has been a landmark. And here again, what I brought up earlier, there was somebody who was gonna go out and do plenty of work for it. But all of a sudden, it dies down. But we can cater to Johnson Park, and we can cater to Civitan. That's not town property. That's not our property. My thing is, there's plenty more questions around town that needs to be answered, okay? But I ain't gonna ask them tonight, because then, you know, we'll come up all of a sudden with the answers. But there needs to be some answers around here. You know, if we're gonna talk about all of Smithfield, East Smithfield is included. But I know for a fact, in talking to the residents of East Smithfield, which is a part of District 1, okay, I mean, it's time. We can talk about it. We can stop coming up with excuses. Or, you know, the biggest thing, they'll throw me under the bus. Okay, well, Councilman Lee didn't do this, he didn't do that. Well, that's why we had department heads. And if you look at some of the goals every year, half of the goals don't even hardly include anything in East Smithfield. So I just want y'all to know that. But, you know, well, Councilman Lee didn't say that. That's why we have a town manager to manage the town. That's not my job to manage the town. And I want to put that out to the public. I want to put it out to everybody. And I'm going to have some pictures for you so you can see. And for all the department heads who don't want me on the council, and you out there soliciting whoever, I'm still going to be here. I'm still going to be here. And if you look at the handbook, that should be grounds for determination. But I know that's another issue there. Some people can get away with stuff, some people can't. But this is just one version of the State of East Smithfield address, and there's gonna be more to come, and more to follow. It's not a gripe session, Okay, but East Smithfield is a part of Smithfield too. But stop getting up here preaching, saying, oh, Smithfield is this, Smithfield is that. Because if you live in over in East Smithfield for a day and you see the things that are going on and have been going on, you'll disagree with some of the stuff that's been said tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Lee. Any other comments from council members? And I'll turn it over to the manager. Manager's report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too wanted to thank the mayor and the council for their involvement in the budget process. We had several meetings. We had good discussions. I think everything that the council asked for was placed in this budget. I don't think we missed anything. The department heads and I had a department head meeting this morning, and I thank them for their hard work as well. I'm very satisfied with the budget that's in front of you, that it was a cumulative effort between the department heads, myself, and the entire council. So thank you for all your involvement and your hard work as well, meeting a lot of different times and a lot of different days. A couple of things going on. We have the Family Life Center that continues to be an ongoing project. Chief Powell has been working diligently over there. We now have several building repairs, including the floors, walls, gutters, Councilman Harris. And
No trees.
also the outside siding. Work continues. We're adding phones, internet, cable TV, conference room space at this time. So very good project. A lot of hard work being done, a lot of volunteerism as well going on over there. So a very positive thing for our community. Mentioned that the UDO committee has completed their draft of the new UDO or the revised UDO. That will be in front of the planning board in July for a public hearing. So anyone interested in commenting on that or going through that should appear at the planning board in July, their meeting. On June 17th, we have the Three Little Pigs Triathlon beginning in the morning over at the Shrek. That's a really nice event, a lot going on. If you have time, please stop out there. Another thing, we have the 301 yard sale going on next weekend, the 16th and the 17th. So if you like yard sales, be on 301. If you don't, I would suggest you stay off. I will be out of town. A very good thing, very hard work by our downtown association to help put that on. Very good thing for Smithfield. We also have an SJBA Invitational Baseball Tournament going on June 21st to the 27th at Community Park. So if you want to see some good baseball, please stop out there and involve you and your family in that. Lastly, our Shrek swim team won everything last year, basically. Their first meet is this Thursday, June 8th at the Shrek. So if you enjoy swimming, please stop out there as well and root on our own Smithfield Shrek Sharks. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Scott? At this time, we're concluded the agenda. However, we do need to go into closed session. This time I would like to entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11, Section A, 3, and 5, to discuss and to consult with the town attorney on the matter and to discuss potential property acquisition.
Make a motion, we're going to closed session.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Closed session at this time. Thank you very much.